Connor's main route to victory is steering everything towards the left hand, as everyone would expect. Now, with Connor, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more things come out of his game. The one thing he used so well against Chad Mendes is the body kicks, and I think that he will target the midsection of Cowboy. If you look closely during the announcements, you'll see that there's a scar down the midsection of Cowboy from an accident he had a few years ago. There's a weakness to the midsection of Cowboy which has been exposed in the past, and Connor will have done his research. He will know that weakness, so he'll poke at that and he'll prod at that. He'll hit with the left hand, he'll hit with the front kick, he'll work some body kicks and back kicks as well. I think everything will ultimately try and keep him at range but up against the fence so he can land that left hand. I expect him to have to use some scrambling ability if he doesn't get the knockout in the first minute or two, because I think Cowboy will try and clinch him. And I think Connor's aware of that as well. I think he will have done his research and he will have watched Cowboy's fights, specifically at welterweight, to see how he deals with bigger, stronger guys. The difference here, obviously, is Connor's going to be the smaller guy. He's going to come in underweight. He's going to probably be coming in at 164, 165. I'd be surprised if he's much heavier than that. So Cowboy dealing with bigger fighters at welterweight because they hit harder. I'm talking about Robbie Lawler mainly. Patrick Cote is another good example. He is able to deal with that size and that power because he smothers it and he takes them down to the ground. With Connor, he's getting in there against someone that he's going to feel like he's the bigger man, and that doesn't happen for Cowboy again at lightweight, at welterweight. At lightweight, sometimes he's the bigger guy, but generally not. I mean, generally he doesn't have much of an advantage as far as physiology. They say he's 6'1". I don't think he's 6'1". I think he's probably slightly. He's 6 foot at the most, maybe 5'11". So he's an average size for a welterweight. He's not got a particularly long reach either. So I think his benefit is to close distance down, and I think he'll feel like the bigger man in there, and I think he'll try and use that to his advantage, especially because he knows that there's a possibility that you can sap the energy of Connor by making him work, by blowing up his arms, and this is where the physiology of Connor in comparison to Cowboy comes into play. And something I'm noticing a bit, there's a pattern I'm starting to realize where fighters that have got, and I don't mean this in any kind of insulting way, I say it on Inside the Octagon sometimes, but there are fighters that are shaped a bit like a fish finger, like Max Holloway, Cowboy Cerrone. If you look at the width of their waist and the width of their shoulders, it doesn't increase a great deal. Whereas if you look at Conor McGregor, I mean, that angle increases quite a bit. You think of that scene off Way of the Dragon where Bruce Lee spreads his lats. He looks like a cobra. Conor's got that narrow waist, wide lats, right? There's a lot more muscle mass on his back. He's heavily muscled. He's got heavily muscled traps and shoulders. His deltoids are heavily muscled. His triceps are heavily muscled. The reason I'm mentioning all this is because all those muscles take a lot of fuel to keep going. When you're a power puncher, when you're throwing heavy shots, it takes a lot of explosive energy, a lot of glycogen to get those muscles to keep going. Think of it like a piston. There's only a certain amount of times that you can get that to fire, whereas the likes of Max Holloway and Cowboy, they're slightly leaner. They don't have the bulk of muscle necessarily. So there's more of a work rate to their style. There's less of a lactic acid buildup, and I think of particularly big triceps. You look at Tyron Woodley's another good example. Tyron Woodley's arms and shoulders are huge. He looks like a He-Man character. They're massive, but a big muscle is kind of like a nitrous tank. You can only press that. You can only press that button so many times before you start to hit empty. And that empty is when you start seeing those guys with their heavy hands start to shake their arms out because that lactic acid is building up in the arms. And there's not really much you can do about that. What you'll see a lot of fighters do, they'll get back to their corner. And if it's something that is a consistent problem for that fighter, you'll get them they'll be massaging their triceps out and they're trying to get some blood moving. When people have been grappling a lot in a round, you'll see people working on the forearms. The reason for that is just to get blood flowing, get some of that lactic acid out of the muscles, because your body can replenish that energy as long as the blood is moving, and lactic acid tends to block those muscles up and make them feel very heavy, very weighty. So I think that I think there are certain physiological advantages for Cowboy in this fight, and I think that if he leans on them, then he could have a good night. But the benefit in that heavily muscled frame of Conor is that when he hits you, it feels like you're being hit by a truck, and that's why people fall over so often.